Welcome. Tonight we slip quietly back into a world so alien and unforgiving you probably won't survive this. You open your eyes to a grey dawn, blinking against the pale light filtering through a tangle of brambles. The air smells of damp earth and old moss. A crow cackles overhead like it knows something you don't. But, for now, you're alone and every instinct in your body screams that being alone is a death sentence. You pick a direction at random, already feeling like every path leads to doom. Lucky for you, there's no crocodile in sight, or maybe unlucky, since one could just as easily be lurking in the reeds near the stream. You hear gurgling ahead. As you shuffle forward, the ground squishes cold mud between your toes. You slip and nearly faceplant into a patch of mushrooms that look edible, but also suspiciously like the kind that makes your heart stop. You wisely stagger past them, hoping you'll find something better. You sit up instantly, aware that there's no warm bed, no phone on your nightstand, no door to lock, just your shivering, naked self and the wet, cold dirt clinging to your skin. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and what time you're listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your stomach growls loud enough to scare a nearby rabbit. You push yourself to your feet, but each step on the frostbitten ground stabs like hot needles. Even the morning birds seem to jeer at your awkward hobble. The sun breaks the horizon, spilling pale gold over a forest that looks like it's waiting to eat you alive. Every bush rustles ominously. Every tree trunk seems to hide something watching. Historians still argue whether our ancestors learned early on to sleep in groups for safety. You hear rustling above, and for a fleeting second, your heart leaps with hope. Maybe it's a squirrel you can catch, but it's a crow, just mocking you with calls that echo through the trees. A mainstream historical fact. Modern Homo sapiens like you likely first appeared about 300,000 years ago. But it wasn't until roughly 50,000 years ago that we developed behaviors resembling modern cultures, which means right now you're stuck in a version of humanity where every sunrise is basically a horror show, a quirky tidbit to make you squirm. There is evidence that early humans sometimes smelled crocodile dung on their skin as a sort of ancient sunscreen or insect repellent. As you near the stream, you almost cry with relief. Water, but bending down, you catch your reflection. Wild eyes, tangled hair, dirt-smeared face like a sleep-deprived raccoon in human form. You cup your hands and sip, only to gag at the taste of mud and something metallic. A sudden breeze carries a scent of rotting meat from somewhere nearby, reminding you death is never far away here. You spin slowly, trying to see if the predator's close, but there's only silence, and that silence feels heavy, like a wool blanket pressing against your ear. Remember, there's no filter straw here, no chlorine tablets. You look down at your legs, already decorated with angry red lines, like a toddler scribbles. Every breath is shallow, every sound feels amplified. Welcome to your first sunrise horrorware. Your best-case scenario is making it to sunset without being eaten, poisoned, or freezing to death. You just swallowed every microorganism dancing happily in that prehistoric puddle. You look up, startled by a shrill shriek overhead. Was that an eagle or something worse? You remember stories of giant eagles with wingspans over 3. Hostess eagle once hunted large prey and probably could have seen you as a snack if you lived in the right. Maybe it's another early human. But good luck figuring out if they're friendly or desperate enough to bash your skull for a scrap of food. But there's no escape here. Just the slow march of sunlight up the trees, warning you that you only have a few precious hours before darkness returns, with a vengeance, part of the world. It echoes weirdly through the forest. You imagine how silly you must look, lost and humming off-key. But if it keeps you alive, who cares? Now, you can't shake the feeling of eyes tracking you from every direction. You stumble into a clearing bathed in sunlight. The light feels warm, almost kind, until you realize it makes you an obvious target. Every time you think you're safe, a new sound makes your pulse skyrocket. Was that a twig snapping behind you? There's a bitter pang of homesickness as you picture your cozy apartment, the hum of your fridge, and the glowing comfort of Netflix. You try humming to yourself, partly to stay calm, partly to scare anything lurking nearby. Your tune cracks midway, replaced by a nervous laugh. Your only hope is to keep moving. You push past branches that claw your skin, feeling scratches bloom into stinging welts. You trudge forward with aching legs, the sky brightening overhead as birdsong grows louder, taunting you with cheerful notes you can't appreciate. Your stomach clenches tighter. It's been hours since you woke, and your mind starts drifting to what you'd give for a protein bar or even that stale bread you forgot in your kitchen last week. Instinct kicks in, you chase it. Your feet slap the cold earth, arms pumping wildly. For a moment, you feel almost hopeful, but within seconds, you're panting, stumbling, and the deer is gone like a ghost. You collapse against a tree, gasping. A squirrel chatters high above you, sounding suspiciously like it's laughing. You throw a stick at it, in frustration, but it falls pathetically short. Reality sets in. Without weapons, without skill, you're just another clumsy predator with zero chance of catching prey. A wild boar emerges, rooting through the underbrush with tusks like curved knives. It hasn't seen you yet. You try to stay downwind, your breath catching, but a twig snaps beneath your foot. The boar lifts its head, eyes sharp. It snorts, charges straight at you with terrifying speed. You yelp, scrambling backward. Roots trip you, leaves whip your face. Shadows stretch with the moving sun, reminding you time is slipping away. You remember stories of how Neanderthals, more robust than you, likely had stronger legs and better endurance for these harsh hunts. The world is silent, but for the buzz of insects and your ragged breathing, you're left with a chilling realization. In this era, every meal is a fight and you just lost round one. Yet, here you are, modern, squishy, and comically unprepared. You can't afford to risk your body as burning what little energy it has left. The boar thunders past, missing you by inches but sending you sprawling onto your back. You lie there staring up at the swaying canopy, the cold seeping into your spine. The only thing bruised worse than your body is your pride. Sitting up, you realize the forest floor is a trap. Every noise echoes, every scent carries, every movement exposes you. The sun climbs higher, heat baking your already exhausted limbs. You limp on, hoping luck will smile on you, but the silence that follows feels more menacing than comforting. Yet here you are, having failed your first hunt, feeling every cell in your body scream for sustenance. You drop to your hands and knees, tracking them carefully. Hunger makes your thoughts hazy. Your head pounds with each heartbeat. Their songs seem to mock your ineptitude. You squint up at them, wondering if they're edible. You'd need a sling, a net, or just a miracle to catch one, but you have none of those, only empty hands and a growling belly. Even a crunchy beetle seems worth considering, but you can't bring yourself to catch one. You think of your fridge again, the one humming so sweetly in your memory, and almost laugh. They weave between roots, under brambles, over fallen logs. Your hope rises with each tiny paw mark, until they vanish into a maze of tangled thorns too dense for you to follow. And while your brain conjures visions of bacon and scrambled eggs, you're left sucking on your own dry tongue. But here, you have to earn every beat or start. You catch a blur of movement. A deer, lean and quick, bounds between trees. Historians still argue whether early Homo sapiens used persistence, hunting running prey to exhaustion to get meat. But looking at your wheezing, sweaty self, you realize you wouldn't last half a mile. Meanwhile, you're burning calories you can't replace. Every step drains your strength. The hunger in your gut twists into nausea. You curse under your breath, but it's lost on the empty forest. You grimace because, if you ever did manage to catch something, you'd probably faint before you could even think of that. You search the ground for clues. Hoofprints, droppings, snapped branches, anything to track game. But everything looks like random scuffs in the dirt. A mainstream factor considered at estimated that hunting provided only 20 to 30% of early human calories in many regions. Gathering was the real MVP of survival. A quirky tidbit pops into your mind as you shuffle on. Some indigenous groups even drank the blood of fresh kills for extra nutrition. Desperation grows as your ears catch rustling to the left. Could it be another chance? You freeze, crouching low, heart pounding. Suddenly, you catch a faint trail of prints in the dirt, small, delicate. You curse softly. The canopy rustles above, birds flitting from branch to branch. With every failed attempt, the forest feels bigger, darker, more alive with things that want you to fail. Your feet drag with each step, toes numb from cold and scraped raw by rocks. As you stagger across a clearing, you glance around for signs of life, anything you can catch or scavenge. But there's nothing dragging your sore body onward. You remember how you used to complain when the grocery store was out of your favorite snack. Now, you'd settle for a handful of anything remotely edible. You squint at the bushes around you, hoping some ancient berry might save your life. You spot clusters of small red fruits gleaming under dappled sunlight. Salvation, or certain doom. You can guess which one you're experiencing right now. A quirky tidbit to keep you company. Some ancient tribes ground up certain rocks like Okatu mix with water and drink as a supposed cure for You're already playing Russian roulette with those berries. You have no bandages, no antiseptic, just dirt, sweat, knees trembling. You scramble down, cracking them open with stones. The kernels are bitter, but you force them down, grateful for even a few calories. It's a small victory, but it feels monumental. Senses sharp yet dulled by exhaustion. The world tilts, slightly dizziness from low blood sugar. You lean against a tree, forehead pressed to the rough bark, breathing shallowly, and a growing sense of doom. Every scratch is a doorway for bacteria, every cut a possible end. Your gut churns, but it might just be hunger. A stand of ferns catches your attention, but your mind blanks on whether they're edible. Every rustle, every leaf, every smell makes you imagine food. You start talking to yourself, bargaining with the universe for a morsel. You're listening, heart hammering. Then a sudden gust rustles everything at once. Your knees almost buckle from the rush of adrenaline. You imagine you hear a drive-through speaker in the distance, but it's just the wind through hollow logs. Are they fiddleheads or the kind that will melt your insides? You lean in for a better look when a sudden rustle startles you. A snake slithers from the shadow's glossy scales, flickering tongue. You freeze, praying it slithers away. Time has no meaning, except for the sun's march across the sky. You've learned one truth. Gathering, ISNT a leisurely stroll it, S. A daily gamble between nourishment and death. And you're painfully unqualified to play it does. You swear it looks smug. You're afraid to move, but more afraid to stay still, knowing predators could smell your desperation. Your stomach screams for you to risk it. You pluck a berry, sniff it suspiciously. It smells like a berry. You pop it into your mouth. Their knowledge was life or death. You, meanwhile, can barely identify a tomato if it isn't wrapped in plastic with a sticker on it. But almost instantly, you second-guess yourself. Was it the safe kind, or the kind that causes your throat to swell shut? You see another patch of plant's long leaves, white flowers, pretty, but you remember somewhere that pretty things can be deadly. You back away, but your foot lands on a thorn. You hiss, as pain shoots up your leg, hopping awkwardly like a deranged stork. You spit it out, frantically wiping your tongue with your dirty hand, which probably only makes things worse. A mainstream fact to chew on as you panic. Stone Age gatherers were absolute experts in edible plants, many of which modern humans can identify. Historians still argue whether early humans developed plant knowledge, mostly through careful teaching or painful trial and error. You shuffle through the brush, each branch grabbing at your skin like skeletal fingers. The sun is now high overhead, beating down relentlessly. Sweat beads across your brow, stinging your eyes. Your dry mouth tastes of panic and mud. Cursing, you sit on a fallen log to examine the damage. The puncture oozes a tiny bead of blood. Infection feels like a death sentence here. You limp onward, eyes scanning for something safe to eat. Your hunger has become an obsession. Your body moves on autopilot. In a rare stroke of luck, you find a tree with nuts scattered beneath it. Your ears twitch at every sound. Your eyes dart at every shadow. You notice birds suddenly going quiet, a bad sign. Something bigger might be The day drags on. As afternoon light slants through the treetops, you realize that what little energy you gained from those bitter nuts is already spent. Your limbs feel heavier than wet sandbag. Every muscle in your legs protests with each step, but you force yourself to keep moving. Each time you stumble, sharp sticks jab your shins. You imagine your modern self complaining about a paper cut, and you almost laugh. Then you hear something that wipes the smile from your mind. A low, guttural growl, echoing through the trees. Because stopping feels like giving up and you're not quite ready for that. You scan the shadows, breath caught in your throat. You'd settle for a lucky rabbit's foot right now, but the only rabbits you've seen are far too fast to catch, and they probably wouldn't volunteer a foot anyway. Historians still argue whether large predators truly stalked humans deliberately or if most attacks were opportunistic. But right now, every rustle sounds like a saber tooth with your name on it. But the canopy hides the horizon in a green, shifting sea. You feel a sudden wave of vertigo. Up here you're exposed to the sky, but your options on the ground don't feel any safer. You push through dense underbrush, your legs getting tangled in roots and vines. In the Stone Age, that would be a death sentence. Without antibiotics, a simple fracture could fester into a fatal infection. Every decision here is a bet with your life. Shapes move around the fire, figures hunched, indistinct, but unmistakably human. Your heart twists between relief and terror. You're no longer alone in the forest, but whether that's good news is anyone's guess. You freeze. Your ears strain for the sound again, but silence returns, thick and suffocating. You tear off a large leaf and use it to wipe your face. Its texture rough, but better than nothing. But the lizard sees you first, scuttling away with a flick of its tail. Another chance lost. Another pang of helplessness. Fire means warmth, cooked food, maybe even safety, but it could also mean rivals who see you as competition for scarce resources. Or worse, enemy. Your parched throat burns with every swallow of stale air. Your mind flits back to your kitchen tap, that endless flow of clean, cold water you once took for granted. You start walking faster, glancing over your shoulder every few seconds. Leaves crunch too loudly under your feet. Branches snap like gunshots. The spider at its center is big enough to make you rethink every horror movie you've ever laughed at. Your senses are on high alert. Every shadow could hide either salvation or doom. You crouch behind a thick bush, peering through the leaves. As you creep through the thickening trees, the smoke grows stronger. Then you hear muffled voices, low and distant, drifting through the woods. You stagger back, flailing your arms, tearing the web as you go. Sticky strands cling to your face, adding a new layer of humiliation to your day. The forest suddenly feels claustrophobic, every trunk and vine conspiring to slow you down. A mainstream fact to chill your blood. Cave lions and hyenas were real Stone Age threats, and their fossils show they grew larger than most modern big cats. As you dart around a fallen tree, you nearly run face first into a massive Your heart hammers as you wipe the web from your eyes, convinced something is crawling across your scalp. The forest around you seems to hum with hidden life. Insects chirping, birds cawing, wind sighing through the leaves. But every sound blends into a single chorus of your vulnerability. A quirky tidbit crawls into your mind. Some ancient tribes believed wearing animal bones or teeth as charms would ward off predators. You clamber onto a rock outcrop for a better view, hoping to spot a safer path or at least avoid whatever made that growl. You inch back down the rock, each foothold precarious. One slip and you'd break a bone. The afternoon heat builds. Sweat drips from your forehead, stinging your eyes. You spot a tiny movement, a lizard basking on a warm stone. You creep closer. Hunger. A sudden breeze carries a scent both welcome and worrying. Smoke your paws, sniffing the air. Could there be other humans nearby? You follow the faint smell cautiously, feet crunching over dried leaves. Your pulse surges. Historians still argue whether early human groups were more likely to welcome strangers or attack them on sight, but your gut tells you to be careful. In a small clearing, you see flickers of orange flame dancing under a spit. You hold your breath, crouched behind the bush as your mind races. The figures by the fire shift and move, shadows of limbs and hair flickering in the flames. You can't tell how many there are, 3, 4, maybe more. They speak in low tones, words lost in the crackle of burning wood. Your stomach clenches with yearning. The smell of roasted meat drifts over, rich and mouth-watering, mocking your empty belly. You remember that mainstream fact. Stone Age clans were small, typically 20 to 50 people, each member vital to the group's survival. Strangers could mean fresh blood to strengthen a tribe or outsiders to be driven off or killed. And you, alone, weak and starving, are hardly the ideal candidate for a warm welcome. You trip over a rock, roll down a slope, and land in a muddy hollow. You lie still, each heartbeat a drum in your ears. Minutes stretch endlessly before silence returns. You sit up, limbs trembling. Now, you're alone again, but exposed, hunted, and lost. It looks dry, hidden, and big enough to crawl inside. You squeeze into the space, heart still pounding. The wood smells of rot, but it's a small price to pay for safety. A slow dread settles in your gut as you realize you must find shelter before darkness swallows the forest completely. The forest seems darker now, every rustle an accusation of your incompetence. Breathless, you press yourself into the earth, leaves and wet dirt caking your arms. The forest night is alive with sounds, owls hooting, distant howls, the scurrying of unseen creatures. You try to steady your breathing, listening for any sign your pursuers might return. You shift your weight, trying to ease the cramps in your legs from crouching too long. A stick snaps underfoot with a sharp crack. Instantly, the group by the fire falls silent. The smoky smell is gone. There's no sign of the fire. Twilight creeps through the tree. A chill sets in, the forest shadows thickening with the promise of night. A voice calls out a harsh guttural sound. Another joins it, sharper, questioning. They know something's here. You dare not move. You scramble to your feet, crashing through the brush. Branches whip your face, tearing skin, but adrenaline drowns out the pain. Behind you, footsteps pound the earth. They're faster, surer. You can't outrun them for long. You remember how they used fire not just for cooking, but for light and protection. But you have no fire, only darkness pressing in from every side. You imagine a barrage of Stone Age alarm bells going off around you, but nothing happens. The figures only watch, waiting. Hunger gnaws, bruises, throb, but your body craves rest more than anything. You drift into a fitful sleep, praying the forest lets you see another dawn. But your foot snags a root, and you fall backward with a thud that echoes like a gunshot in the silent forest. Shouts erupt by the fire. Shapes lurch forward, carrying spears tipped with sharpened stone. One figure rises, tall and broad-shouldered, turning toward your hiding spot. The air goes dead still. You freeze, hoping the shadows keep you invisible. Historians still argue whether early humans were more territorial or cooperative with other groups. But right now you're praying for the cooperative side of the debate. A quirky tidbit floats through your panicked mind. Ancient tribes sometimes used whistling arrows or noisemakers to frighten intruders or signal others of danger. Slowly, you retreat a few steps, trying not to rustle the leaves. Panic explodes in your chest. You veer off a game trail, ducking under low branches, heart hammering. The forest is a blur of green and brown. The sounds of pursuit grow fainter, fading into distant shouts. You stagger to your feet, scanning in your wild escape, you've lost all sense of direction. Your mind reels with new fears. You'd hoped to find people for safety, but they nearly killed you instead. As you limp through the underbrush, you spot a large fallen tree with a hollow beneath its trunk. You curl into a ball, shivering. Every crack of a branch outside makes you flinch. Cold seeps into your bones. You wish you had the thick animal skins Stone Age people wore to stay warm. Your eyelids droop with exhaustion. The day's failures weigh heavy on your chest. A cold shiver ripples down your spine as you wake to the faint grey light of dawn, filtering through cracks in your hololog. Your mouth feels like sandpaper, your tongue thick and heavy. The first rays of sun reveal a patch of mushrooms pushing through the forest floor pale, delicate caps nodding in the breeze. But you hesitate, haunted by the thought of liver failure from a wrong choice. Historians still argue whether our ancestors developed reliable knowledge of mushrooms early on, or learned by tragic mistakes, one funeral at a time. Crawling from your makeshift shelter, you stagger upright, scanning the silent forest. You wish you had one now, but your hands are empty, and your patience is running thinner than your hopes. Your hands close around slippery skin. Triumph, you stare at the squirming creature, hesitating. Could you eat it raw? Your stomach votes yes. Your mind screams no. But in the Stone Age, there's no room for You follow it cautiously, hoping it leads to water, or at least some clue of animal activity. It occurs to you that Stone Age people read these trails like newspapers, tracking prey and competitors alike. The meat is minimal, the taste swampy and bitter, but the rush of protein brings a flicker of strength back to your limbs. But right now, you're just grateful to have a pointy stick between you and the darkness of the forest. You gag once, but it stays down. Progress, however grim. You lunge clumsily, hands slicing through empty space as the fish flees. You creep forward, spear raised, feet silent on the mossy ground. But as you near, the creature darts away with impossible speed, leaving you alone with your frustration. The frog bought you a few more hours. You clutch your spear tighter, gaze hardening. Survival in the Stone Age isn't just about finding food, it's about becoming predator instead of prey. It's pitifully primitive, but it gives you a sense of purpose and, maybe, a fighting chance. You test its weight, practicing slow thrusts into the air. Over and over, you try, each attempt splashing noisily, until you collapse on the bank, panting, soaked, and defeated. You need something sturdier, more concealed, a place to rest and hide. You survey the forest, imagining where you could construct a lean-to or find a cave. No sign of your pursuers, just you, the rustling leaves, and the chorus of early birds. You quicken your pace, practically stumbling into a shallow stream glinting in the morning sun. Dropping to your knees, you cup your hands and drink greedily. The water's cold and tastes of earth, but it's life itself trickling down your throat. You take a few cautious steps, legs stiff, each joint creaking like an annoyed hin. Hunger hits you with a ferocity you've never known. A mainstream fact to ponder miserably. Early humans often went days between successful hunts or abundant foraging, which conditioned their bodies to endure cycles of feast and famine. Yours, pampered by 24-hour grocery stores, is already shutting down after a single day of deprivation. You wander through the dew-soaked underbrush, searching desperately for anything edible. You move on, stomach growling like distant thunder. Ahead you spot a game trail winding through the trees, a faint but well-worn path. Soon, your ears pick up the babble of moving water. Relief surges through you. You rinse your face, watching the ripples spread across the stream. Something shiny catches your eye, a fish darting in the clear water. A quirky tidbit to soothe your bruised ego. Some Stone Age cultures crafted ingenious fish traps from woven branches, creating funnel-like cages that allowed fish in but not out. You rise, scanning the stream for easier prey. Tiny frogs cling to reeds, eyes blinking lazily. You creep forward, lunging at one. You steel yourself, dispatch the frog, and force it down. Feeling emboldened, you break a sturdy branch from a nearby tree, sharpening one end on a rock to fashion a crude spear. Historians still argue whether early spear design evolved primarily for hunting or defense. The sun climbs higher, burning off the mist. Birds shriek overhead, and you spot a small animal scurrying in the distance, a rabbit or maybe a ground squirrel. You trudge on, determined not to waste the daylight. Your mind drifts to the idea of shelter. Last night's hollow log won't cut it again. Your stomach growls again, but for the first time, it doesn't feel like your end is imminent. As the sun arcs higher, its rays pierce the canopy in golden spears of light, but the forest floor remains a patchwork of dark shadows and dappled warmth. You trudge along the stream's edge, eyes scanning for anything edible or useful. Your breath puffs with quiet determination, each step carrying you deeper into this alien, primeval world. You duck inside, savoring the brief sense of safety the stone walls offer. Still, you know that staying put too long might invite danger. Caves were both refuge and potential trap. You think back to last night's hollow log and shudder. As you drag debris back, you hear a rustle overhead. Glancing up, you spot a family of small monkeys leaping through the trees. Without it, you face another freezing night and, perhaps, an unwelcome visit from creatures with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. You scavenge the forest floor for dry twigs, bark, and leaves. But the challenge lies not in gathering fuel, but in igniting it. They chatter noisily, their shrill cries echoing through the forest. Again and again you try, hands cramping, sweat dripping into your eyes. Each failure chips away at your hope. This fire is your shield, your signal of defiance against the darkness. The flames lick upward, casting flickering shadows that dance on the cave ceiling. The sun fades, stars blink awake in the indigo sky, and nocturnal sounds, resistant howls, wings fluttering overhead, the deep, echoing hoot of an owl. You clutch your spear, staring into the fire. The flickering light soothes you, but also reminds you that the forests beyond your cave teems with eyes and teeth, waiting for darkness to fall completely. You're still weak, still hungry, but for the first time you feel you might have a fighting chance. Your mind screams for a lighter or even a box of damp You freeze, realizing that their racket could alert larger animals or worse, those humans who chased you yesterday. And pyrite to create reliable sparks, methods requiring patience and skill you don't yet have. The tiny ember smolders a faint orange glow in the dry grass. You cup it carefully, blowing gentle breaths until it flickers into a fragile flame. A surge of triumph rushes through you. A few meager calories are better than nothing. You feed it twigs, then sticks, and soon a small fire crackles in the cave, its warmth chasing the damp chill from the stone walls. But you don't give up. You grit your teeth and try again, letting your frustration fuel your determination. You can't face another night of cold fear with only rotting wood for company. Your eyes flicker over the landscape, searching for shelter. A rocky outcrop ahead catches your eye. The result looks pitiful, more art project than fortress, but it's better than nothing. You slip inside and tuck your spear at your side. A breeze whispers through the entrance, carrying scents of damp earth and crushed leaves. Clambering over moss-licked boulders, you discover a shallow cave tucked beneath a ledge. It smells musty but dry, far better than the open forest. A mainstream fact to buoy your spirits. Many Stone Age people preferred caves as seasonal shelters, using them for protection against weather, predators, and rival tribes. You decide to improve your odds by gathering branches and leaves to block the entrance. Partially, historians still argue whether early humans hunted or merely scavenged monkeys and small primates, but you wonder if they cursed them as loudmouthed alarm systems as much as you do now. You work quickly, weaving branches into a crude screen for your cave entrance. A quirky tidbit floats to mind. Some Stone Age groups used animal dung, even crocodile eggs, mixed with mud as building material to seal gaps and shelters and keep out pests. You eye at the forest floor skeptically, not quite ready to smear anything unpleasant on your makeshift home. Not yet. As the afternoon light shifts toward evening gold, your thoughts turn to fire. You kneel on the cave floor, scraping a sharp stone against another, sending weak cold sparks into your tinder pile. You pause to catch your breath, remembering the mainstream fact that ancient people used bow drills or flint. You sit back, basking in the fire's glow, feeling a primitive sense of mastery. You roast a few insects you manage to scoop from under rocks, crunchy, unpleasant, but vaguely nutty in taste. You gag at first, but force yourself to chew. Outside, the forest grows quiet as dusk deepens. You lean against the rough cave wall, eyes fixed on the small fire crackling before you. It's hypnotic. The flames dance, mesmerizing in the deepening night. But each gust of wind makes you flinch, worried it might snuff out your fragile victory. You feed the fire sparingly, terrified of running out of fuel before dawn. Your belly twists with hunger pangs. Memories of your fridge at home drift through your mender-taunting slideshow of leftovers and snacks you'll never taste again. You chuckle softly at your own weakness, the sound harsh in the quiet cave. Remember that quirky tidbit? Some Stone Age groups ground acorns into flour, soaking them to remove bitter tannins before baking them into dense, chewy cakes. You scramble to add more sticks, your hands shaking with fatigue. The growl comes again, closer. Your eyes sweep the darkness beyond your cave, but you see nothing. Suddenly, two yellow eyes catch the firelight. They hover at the tree line, blinking slowly. You feel the weight of that gaze like a physical force. Flames rise again, but your relief is short-lived as a low growl echoes from the forest. You'd kill for one of those right now. You know, though, that hunger is the least of your problems. Without warmth, you'd already be happy and carry it with them, a skill that let them expand into colder, more dangerous regions. You cling to that bit of history like a charm, willing your meager flames to keep burning. You tired, hungry, and barely able to light a fire versus whatever predator claims those glowing eyes. You raise the spear and shout hoarsely, hoping noise alone might scare it off. The eyes blink once more, then vanish, melting into the shadows. Silence crashes back down, heavier than before. Without water, you'd soon collapse. But there's another Stone Age danger lurking beyond your cave entrance. Predator. You stare into the flames until they blur, your mind drifting to the possibility of day. Light will mean safety, or at least a chance to move and find better shelter or food. You drift into uneasy fatigue wraps around you like a heavy blanket. Every blink lasts longer than the last. You mumble half-remembered jokes to yourself like how, back home, you'd complain if your electric blanket had one cold spot. Now, you'd trade everything for that luxury. Mainstream factoring the Paleolithic, European forests were home to cave lions, hyenas, and massive bears. While you may not see any of them tonight, you can't shake the feeling of being watched. You think of time as you knew it, hours on a clock, days in a calendar, but here, time feels like a slow, endless loop of darkness, cold, and fear. Your eyes roam the dark forest again. The yellow eyes don't return, but you sense the forest, watching, judging, waiting. You adjust your grip on your spear, pressing your back against the stone. All you can do now is wait for the sky to pale and pray you make it to morning. You wonder how Stone Age people marked days and seasons without calendars or clocks. Perhaps they watched the phases of the moon, or the migration of herds, or the shifting stars overhead. You lean forward, feeding another stick to the fire. Sparks float up like tiny fireflies. Your mind drifts to the people who chased you. Are they still out there? Historians still argue whether Neanderthals and Homo sapiens competed violently or coexisted in patches of cooperation. All you know is, you're not eager to test the former theory firsthand. Your eyelids droop as exhaustion tugs at you, but sleep feels dangerous. You force your eyes open, blinking at every sound. The forest outside hums with life-rustling leaves, skittering feet, the occasional snarl or shriek. You clutch your spear, knuckles white, eyes darting to the flickering shadows on the cave walls. Minutes stretch into hours. A gust of wind rattles the branches outside. You stifle a gasp, heart racing. The fire flickers dangerously low. You freeze, ears straining. You grip your spear tighter, but the odds are laughable. Your breath shudders in your chest. You know, predators rarely attack fires directly, but the knowledge does little to calm you. You remember the mainstream fact that Stone Age humans were among the few species to master fire. The forest night stretches on. You jolt awake once more as a stick shifts in the fire, sparks showering your legs. You stamp them out, heart pounding. Somehow, the blackness outside your cave begins to thin. The first hints of dawn slip through the forest canopy, painting the treetops in a pale, hopeful glow. You stretch, feeling bones crack in your back and shoulders. Then you look to the cave entrance. The forest is no less menacing by daylight, but at least the shadows have reached. As you walk, you find tracks in the soft mud, tiny hoofprints that make your pulse quicken. Could they belong to deer or antelope? You follow them deeper into the forest, mind racing with plans of an ambush. You shoulder your crude spear and step out, scanning for signs of movement. You blink, stunned by the simple miracle of surviving the night. As you search for smaller prey, you kick over a rotting log, revealing a nest of fat, white grub squirming in the decaying wood. You chew another grub, gag, and swallow. You hesitate only a second before scooping a handful. You remember that mainstream fact about early humans. They invented and refined tools long before they created art, language, or settled villages. A squirrel bolts up a tree, its chattering laugh mocking your clumsy reaction. These sounds would be soothing in another life. Here they remind you of how alive and how alone you truly are. You let out a shaky breath. Every noise feels like a threat. Every moment is a balancing act between hope and terror. Toolmaking was Survivorland right now. Your life depends on learning fast. Your mind works faster than your exhausted body, but you sense a grim determination solidifying inside you. You're still in danger, but you're learning, adapting, becoming something closer to the creature you need to be to survive this ancient world. The taste is revolting sour, with a texture like bursting grapes, but the protein is vital, and each bite steadies your wavering strength. You are alive, and the fire is still smoldering, a twin victory that would have made any Stone Age elder proud. Your limbs protest as you rise, every muscle stiff from a night spent tense and half awake. A mainstream fact to keep you humble. Some estimates suggest Stone Age humans spent over half their waking hours gathering enough calories to survive. With no stored food, you're no exception if you don't find something to eat soon. Your chances of lasting another night are slim. You set off along the stream you found yesterday, ears straining for the splash of fish or the rustle of small game. The trail leads you to a clearing dappled in sunlight. There, grazing near the far edge, stands a small herd of deer. Your breath catches. This is the best chance you've had. Remember that quirky tidbit? Some Stone Age tribes used coordinated group drives to funnel game into traps or over cliffs, taking advantage of herd instincts. Alone, your odds are laughably low no matter how hard you try. You're just one clumsy predator among many. Then, with a snort, they scatter like leaves in a storm. You sprint a few steps, spear raised, but the herd vanishes between trees, leaving you panting and empty-handed. You crouch low, moving with painstaking care. Every snapped twig feels like a gunshot. But as you creep closer, the deer lift their heads, ears swiveling. Their dark eyes lock onto you. For one suspended moment, you stare at each other across the clearing. You stand in the silence, chest heaving, cursing under your breath. You stomp through the undergrowth, frustration fueling your steps. Historians still argue whether insect consumption was a primary strategy or a fallback in lean times, but your empty belly votes to put the debate on hold. As the sun climbs higher, you begin to collect anything that might help you survive another night. Stones for sharpening your spear, long vines for potential traps, broad leaves to catch rainwater. In a quiet moment, you squat beside a fallen tree, using a sharp stone to practice carving a notch in a stick. Each cut sends small chips of wood flying. A rustle to your left makes you whirl, spear ready. You slump against a tree, letting the forest sounds wash over you. The sigh of wind and leaves, the distant drumming of a woodpecker, the whisper of insects in the underbrush. The sun hangs high overhead now. Sweat stings your eyes, hunger gnaws at you, but your belly feels stronger than it did yesterday. The sun dips lower in the sky, shadows stretching long and thin across the forest floor. The warm afternoon light belies the rising urgency gnawing at your gut. You need shelter for another night, and you can't risk returning to your cave. Each snap of a twig under your feet sets your nerves buzzing. You remember the mainstream fact that Stone Age people often rotated campsites, not just to follow migrating herds, but to avoid exhausting local resources or attracting unwanted attention. Today, you feel the wisdom of constant movement deep in your bones. It reeks of smoke and fear, a beacon for anyone or anything tracking you. Without fire tonight, you resign yourself to a cold vigil in the dark. You press your cheek into the dirt, willing yourself to stay calm. The sky overhead fades from pale gold to dusky lavender, then deep indigo speckled with stars. You curl up inside the roots, spear across your chest, every sense straining for sounds of approach. You nibble the last few grubs you collected, swallowing them dry and gritty. You wish desperately for even a handful of berries or tubers. You murmur jokes to yourself. Bet you never thought camping could be a death sentence, and chuckle weakly. The sound swallowed by the vast night. Remember that crocodile dung sunscreen from earlier. You find yourself missing even that bit of absurdity, because at least it meant you had something, anything, to smear on your skin. Here, the night air bites, every inch of you raw. You think back to how some Stone Age groups developed deep knowledge of edible plants like cattail roots, roasted into mush, or wild onions hidden in the earth. If only you had the time, or the teacher, to learn these secrets. The forest comes alive again with twilight. Frogs start their croaking chorus, cicadas trill, and owls begin their ghostly calls. And yet, dawn means one thing. You need to move again. Find food, water, and a safer place before night returns to claim you for good. The night seems colder than before. Without fire, you shiver as the temperature plummets. Each time you drift towards sleep, your mind jolts. You awake with a rush of fear. You're alone, exposed, and one mistake from being dinner. You crouch and slide inside. It's cramped, earthy, and cloaked in shadows. Historians still argue whether small groups built semi-permanent shelters or simply drifted like nomads, erecting only temporary windbreaks or lentues. You clutch your spear, heart pounding. The noise draws closer, a heavy tread muffled by leaf litter. You hold your breath, praying whatever it is will move on. Either way, comfort wasn't the point, survival was. You grip your spear until your hands ache. Minutes pass, nothing moves. But you can't shake the certainty that that the forest itself has decided you're unworthy of sharing its ancient, ruthless secrets. The air smells of damp moss and old leaves, but it feels safer than the open forest or the exposed mouth of your cave. It's slow, clumsy work, but it calms your mind. You recall the quirky tidbit that some early humans braided strips of animal sinew or plant fibers into surprisingly strong cordage technology that let them set snares, lash tools together, or even make early woven bags. You imagine how different your odds would be if you had a proper net to trap fish or birds. You set off through the underbrush, determined to find a new hiding place before darkness falls. You step carefully, alert for signs of predators or humans. Your eyes catch on a large tree with sprawling roots arching high enough to form a crawl space beneath. As you arrange branches to partially block the opening, you wonder about what passed for home in the Stone Age. Once you're settled, you start weaving a few thin vines into a crude net. Your fire-making supplies are limited, and carrying a flame across distances isn't something you've mastered. The wind picks up, rustling leaves in a whisper that teases your ears with phantom footsteps. Hunger claws at your belly once more. You doze fitfully, waking at every branch, snap, and animal cry. Hours creep by. You watch the stars slide overhead, tracing slow arcs. Finally, you hear rustling in the undergrowth nearby. It's louder than a rabbit or a squirrel, steady, purposeful. Suddenly, a guttural cough splits the night, followed by silence, so complete it makes your ears ring. You lie there, muscles locked, eyes wide, until the eastern sky begins to lighten. Another night survived, but you feel a flicker of pride. As dawn spills across the forest, you crawl stiffly from your tangle of roots. Each joint protests, every muscle aches, but you're grateful for the light proof you've made it another day. You rise and survey your surroundings, eyes catching the glisten of dew on leaves, and a pale mist drifts between the trees, ethereal and deceptive, muting sound and shrouding threats. But thirst overrides caution. You cup your hands and drink deeply, ignoring the taste of wet earth. The water soothes your throat, cooling the feverish edges of your exhaustion. The thought of feasting on leftovers from a predator's kill, of crouching over a half-eaten deer while fending off hyenas, makes your stomach turn, but you know you'd do it in a heartbeat if given the chance. The process absorbs you, helps push back the fear gnawing at your mind. Shards of flint bite your palms as you attempt to sharpen the wood. A flicker, a silvery flash in the shallows makes your heart leap. You freeze, spear poised. You lunge, but the fish slips through your fingers, and you slam the spear into muddy water. Again. When you test it in the water, your aim is comically bad. Along the bank, you spot tuberous plants with broad leaves, possibly wild yams, or something worse. You hesitate, torn between hunger and fear of poison. You tell yourself, keep moving, keep learning, keep breathing. Each step forward is another small victory, another chance to outlast the Stone Age. You remember reading about how early humans sometimes watched what animals ate to judge safety. But here, you have no time or animals to guide you. Each lunge sends waves washing over your knees, but nothing more. You set off with grim determination. Water is your first priority. The forest canopy opens here, letting you glimpse the blue sky. For a moment, you imagine rescue helicopter beating across the sky, a voice calling your name. But you know this fantasy is crueler than your reality. Hunger gnaws again. You try to spear one, but each thrust sends ripples flashing and fish scattering. Frustration bubbles up. You recall the quirky tidbit that some Stone Age communities used woven fish traps shaped like cones or baskets. Ingenious devices you can only dream of replicating without proper materials or knowledge. Your breath comes in ragged gasps, tears hot on your skin. You pound your fists into the wet earth, feeling helpless rage. Then you look up, startled by a flutter of wings. You chew slowly, every bite a gamble. You try not to think about toxins, instead picturing the Stone Age people who learned the hard way which plants killed and which sustained. A small bird perches overhead, head cocked as if mocking you. You imagine it saying, "Nice try, city slicker." Your mouth feels like sandpaper, each swallow a painful scrape. You look feral, and maybe you realize that's what you need to become to survive this ancient world. You trudge downhill, knowing streams and rivers often lie in valleys. The forest brightens as the sun climbs, shafts of light spearing through the canopy. For a moment, it's almost beautiful. As you press on, you notice animal trails narrow, winding paths, pressed into the undergrowth. Mainstream fact. Stone Age hunter-gatherers were master trackers, reading broken branches, scat, and subtle prints like an open book. You, however, are about as subtle as a marching band. Every snapped twig echoes in your ears like a gunshot. Your path brings you to a shallow, muddy creek. The water trickles sluggishly, clouded with silt. You sit by the creek, watching small fish dart among the rocks. Historians still argue whether early humans spent more time scavenging than actively hunting, especially in lean seasons when carcasses were easier to find than elusive prey. You break off a flexible branch, trying to fashion a fishing spear with a split tip. Frustrated, you move downstream, hoping for shallows where fish might get trapped in small pools. You kneel at the water's edge, eyes scanning for movement. You collapse onto the bank, face in your hands, mud smearing your cheeks. You stagger to your feet. Your reflection in the creek startles you. Sunken eyes, dirt-streaked skin, hair matted with sweat and grime. You push away from the water, following the creek's curve deeper into the forest. You scratch one root open, sniff it, then take a cautious nibble. Bitter, starchy, but not immediately nauseating. With a few mouthfuls filling your belly, you move on, senses sharpening as you scan for shelter for the coming night. The afternoon heat beats down as you trudge through dense undergrowth, sweat dripping into your eyes and stinging like salt. Your feet ache from the rough forest floor. Every step a reminder that the Stone Age isn't just a place in a textbook at SA, and you're barely passing. Your thoughts turn to shelter again. You remember how earlier you found refuge beneath twisted tree roots, but that was a lucky accident. This could be a sanctuary. You crawl inside and feel a wave of relief as the cool wood wraps around you. It's snug, dark, and strangely comforting. Maybe they, too, struggled with cold nights and gnawing hunger. Maybe, in some ways, they were more like you than you want to admit. You need something better, something to keep out rain, wind, and predators. It's unlikely to catch anything tonight, but the act itself steadies your shaking hands and racing thoughts. Your nerves spike another reminder that this ecosystem isn't waiting politely for you to catch up. It feels like a different planet, a fairy tale you can barely recall. Mainstream knowledge tells us some Stone Age groups built impressive structures, from simple line-twos to semi-permanent huts made of wood, bone, and animal hides. Could you learn to read the forest's hidden signs? Could you become part of this ancient rhythm instead of a stumbling outsider? The forest hushes, settling into the night's slow breath. You close your eyes, waiting for sleep, knowing tomorrow will demand everything you've got. Your stomach protests less today. Your body is adapting, a small victory in this brutal world. The process is clumsy, your fingers too inexperienced for the delicate task. You recall that some archaeological finds suggest early humans had not only practical skills, but also a sense of aesthetics, with evidence of ornamentation and symbolic objects. Historians still argue whether these were purely functional or carried deeper meaning. But without tools or time, you're stuck with improvisation. You come across a fallen tree, its massive trunk split open and hollowed out by years of rot. While settling in, you fiddled with a handful of dried leaves, attempting to weave them together loosely. You try to imagine the person who might have carved those ancient beads or painted ochre patterns on cave walls. Outside, the forest thrums with life. Birds call to each other, insects buzz near decaying logs, and far off, you hear the faint roar of a large animal. You gnaw on a few more grubs, the taste no less revolting but undeniably necessary. As twilight deepens, you set a crude trapper-looped vine tied awkwardly around a stick. Positioned near a patch of disturbed earth, lying back in your hollow tree, you let your mind drift to the strange, distant world. You came from the hum of electricity, the luxury of warm showers, the miracle of a grocery store. You wonder, as you always do, if you could last just one more day. Would your clumsy spear throw improve? The stars appear overhead, pinpricks of cold light piercing the velvet sky. Morning arrives like a gentle whisper, soft and uncertain, slipping between the trees with a cool breath. You wake tangled in roots and leaves, your body stiff but miraculously intact. The hollow tree still shelters you, a fragile fortress against the wild unknown. You sit up slowly, mindful of every creak and protest from your limbs. Your mind drifts to food, as it always does. Hunger is a constant companion here, more persistent than any fear. You remember that historians still debate the exact ratio of plant-based food to meat in their diets, with some arguing early humans relied heavily on gathered roots and nuts, while others suggest a meat-heavy menu. None succeed, but you practiced relentlessly, imagining yourself as the hunter your ancestors were. The forest sounds soothe you, a lullaby of rustling leaves and distant calls. Sometimes, you wish for a companion to share this struggler-friendly voice in the dark, a hand to steady it. You lie down, clutching your spear, feeling the rough bark press into your back. You decide to follow a faint trail of crushed grass leading toward a sunder-plowed clearing. The path is uncertain, marked by animal tracks and broken branches, but it might lead to something edible or at least worth chasing. Stone Age humans were expert foragers, balancing knowledge of plants with the demands of hunting. It's a delicate dance of risk and reward. As you move cautiously, you spot a cluster of wild berries hanging low on a thorny bush. They look tempting, bursting with color, but your stomach hesitates. Some berries are delicious, others deadly. Nearby, a faint rustle catches your attention. You freeze, spear ready, heart pounding. Your own breath comes ragged just thinking about it. You're no marathon runner, and your spear lacks the sharpness to deliver a clean kill. Still, the idea of tracking something down with patience and grit feels oddly hopeful. A small rabbit darts out, its white tail flashing like a signal before vanishing into the brush. The sight stirs something primal, a surge of hunger mixed with admiration for such quickness. You recall the quirky tidbit that early humans sometimes used trial and error, chewing a tiny bit, waiting hours for reactions to discover edible plants. You decide to take the risk. A few berries squish between your fingers. You pop one into your mouth, sweet, a little tart, and utterly feeling a small victory. You gather a handful, careful not to disturb the plant too much. You remember the mainstream fact that some Stone Age groups practiced persistence, hunting track and prey over long distances until exhaustion claimed the animal. You spend the day following animal trails, collecting berries and tubers, attempting a few spear throws at fleeting targets. As dusk falls, you return to your hollow tree shelter, tired but not defeated. Your thoughts wander to the endless debate among scholars. Were Stone Age people social creatures with complex language, or simple groups communicating mostly through gestures? But for now, it's just you and the forest, locked in a quiet battle for survival. The following morning you awake to the faint glow of dawn slipping through the trees. Your body aches from restless sleep and the constant alertness required to survive here. But there is a stubborn flicker inside you, a determination not to become another lost story whispered by the wind. You venture out with a sharpened stick, a few handfuls of berries, but without proper cordage or experience. Your attempts to recreate these are awkward at best, and a resolve to learn the forest's secrets, or at least enough to last a little longer. The ingenuity astounds you, but here and now, you can barely balance on a fallen branch. The friction method of Bodro seems nearly impossible. Your hands blister, smoke drifts, but no flame You wonder about the countless generations who perfected this art, their fingers skilled and patient beyond your imagining. You breathe deeply, willing yourself to sleep, knowing tomorrow will demand more courage, more patience. Your senses are sharper now, the scent of damp earth, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds all guiding your movements. You're leaning toward a brutal mix of all three. You notice tiny footprints in the mud, small mammals you might trap or catch if you're clever. You try to mimic their quiet footsteps, but your heavy boots or, rather, your bare, calloused feet give you away. The forest remains a harsh teacher, showing no mercy to your clumsiness. Mainstream knowledge tells us Stone Age humans mastered the use of traps and snares, devices that allowed them to catch small game without exhausting themselves. You recall that quirky tidbit about some ancient peoples using deadfalls, heavy logs, balanced precariously to fall on prey triggered by As the day wears on, you experiment with fire again. You settle near your hollow tree, eyes heavy but alert. You think about the sheer scale of time that separates you from those Stone Age people, not just centuries, but a vast expanse of trial, error, and adaptation. Historians still argue how early humans first harnessed fire. Was it through lightning strikes, volcanic activity, or relentless trial? By evening, exhaustion wraps you in a heavy cloak. The forest hums softly, a living presence, pressing close. You whisper a tired joke to the night. Maybe next time, I'll just stick to binge-watching documentaries. The light wanes as another day draws to a close, and you find yourself seated beneath a giant oak, its ancient limbs stretching skyward like the arms of a silent sentinel. Your body is weary beyond words, muscles protesting every movement, but your mind drifts, reflective, quiet. You realize the Stone Age was not just about surviving the wilderness. It was about learning the hard language of nature, day by day, season by season. You recall the long chain of small victories, the handfuls of berries, the fleeting glimpses of game, the rough shelter beneath the roots, the failed attempts that taught you more than success ever could. You ponder how some scholars still debate whether early humans were driven by instinct alone or possessed a spark of foresight, planning weeks or months ahead. Their struggles, their fears, their hopes, they echo in your bones, and maybe, just maybe, if you could stay a little longer, you might learn their secrets. The forest around you is a symphony of sounds, the creak of branches, the chatter of distant birds, the whisper of wind through leaves. It feels vast, indifferent, but strangely alive. Remember, though you might not last a day in the Stone Age, here and now, you have everything you need to rest, to heal, to grow. Maybe you think that spark is what made the difference between life and death, between being food and being hunter. You glance at your spear, rough and crooked but yours. Your breath softens, your heartbeat slows, and the wild world fades into a gentle murmur. The forest, once so wild and terrifying, softens into a lullaby of rustling leaves and distant calls. You're safe here, in this moment, trapped in the slow, steady rhythm of the earth. As you settle down for what might be your last night, you feel a deep connection with those early people. The night wraps around you like a slow-moving tide, drawing you deeper into quiet. Now, as you lie back and let your eyes close, feel the day's tension melt away like morning mist. Breathe deeply, letting each inhale fill you with calm. Each exhale release the day's worries. Imagine the cool night air brushing your skin, the gentle murmur of wind weaving through branches above. You're part of an ancient story now, one told in whispers and shadows, carried on the breath of time. Sleep will come soon, carrying you away from harsh survival into peaceful dreams. Good night, traveler, sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.